Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's AeHIN Hour webinar. Please be reminded that all microphones are muted throughout the meeting. For comments, please use the chat box, and for questions, please use the questions box. Today's speaker is Mr. Tim Wood, who specializes in applying information technology to address the problems of poverty and health in developing countries. After 12 years at Microsoft working on software development, Mr. Wood joined the Grameen Foundation's Technology Center, where he pioneered replication of the Grameen Village Phone Program, launching sustainable initiatives in Uganda and Rwanda, and co-authoring the Village Phone Replication Manual. Mr. Wood went on to implement many pilot programs for microfinance institutions in the Philippines and Kenya, and spent 4 years as the Director of Mobile Health Innovation at the Grameen Foundation, creating the MoTech platform to deliver multiple mobile service initiatives at scale in India and Africa. Mr. Wood joined the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in 2013 and is working across a wide range of digital health and information technology initiatives. Without further ado, we may now call on our speaker, Mr. Tim Wood.
Great, thank you so much for that introduction. Today I'm going to share with you the principles of donor alignment for digital health. These are a set of principles that were announced at the World Health Summit in Berlin just last month, and are new guidelines that donors are going to try to follow for funding of digital health projects. I'll give a very, very brief presentation, an overview of the principles, and then would welcome questions and conversations with everyone. There, I think, is clear recognition that there's a huge potential of impact for digital in global health, but over the years, we really have not seen that potential be realized. Data is still very much locked in paper systems. There's a high degree of duplication, a lack of interoperability, and a very high degree of fragmentation across all the various systems. And at the Gates Foundation, this is something that we had started to look into in early 2017 as we tried to assess why some of the programs that we had been working on were not reaching scale and not reaching the sustainable business models that we had hoped for. And we started to have some discussions with others in the donor community and others in the implementation community, and began to be crisp about recognizing a problem where specifically after over a decade of investments in digital health, we really were not seeing sustainable systems with a clear impact. And I think one of the reasons that had been happening was donors who were funding programs all sort of in a silo without any real concerted effort made to take their programs and align them to country national plans. So in the fall of 2017, there happened to be some opportunistic gatherings and conversations where a group of donors were together. There was a DHIS2 partners meeting in Oslo, and then soon thereafter, a discussion around digital health at Wilton Park in the UK. And in these forums, we had some very, very frank conversations about the problem and the role that the donor community was playing in contributing to the fragmentation of digital systems. We decided to get together and have a focused conversation around this problem and to try to identify ways that the donor community could be a better actor. So we got together at the very beginning of 2018 in January and spent about 2.5 days and came up with a set of principles, which I'll share with you here in a moment. The approach that we took was very similar to the creation of the principles for digital development, which you might also be familiar with. These have been around for about 4 or 5 years now and have 9 core principles ranging from design with the user to reuse and improve and things, and be collaborative. These are at digitalprinciples.org. And those principles were created in an attempt to provide some guidelines for both donors and implementers about how to create successful digital health programs, but deliberately, when they were created, left out specific guidelines for donors. So in this process of creating the principles of donor alignment, we really focused on that donor side of the equation. And after going through many months of feedback and iterations, we came up with a final version of 2018, which organizations then endorsed. So there are 10 principles that you can find at the digitalinvestmentprinciples.org website, and I will, in subsequent slides, share some of those principles in detail. But I think there are three primary messages that I want to make sure to communicate. And the first is that we really don't think that it is a technology problem that is preventing the adoption of digital health systems. It really is a leadership and governance and fragmentation issue. And as such, we are really calling for donors to align their investments around country digital health strategies. So this means that instead of a donor, such as the Gates Foundation, showing up in a country and saying, we are interested in disease domain X, we are going to fund a project for disease domain X. Instead, the first question would be, what is the country's digital health strategy, and how does that strategy align with the interests and objectives that the donor has, and how can those donor efforts be anchored in an existing country digital health strategy? If a country does not have a digital health strategy, we would help create one, and if it was a strategy that was nascent or weak, we would help to improve that. And the second really important component is a desire to invest in digital global goods. These are software tools that can be applied to multiple countries across multiple disease domains and form the basic building blocks for strong digital health systems. And we think that over time, in order for these technology components to be successful and to be sustainable, they need to be resourced in a way that can be applied over a wide range of diseases and across a wide range of countries. So this is the first 5 set of the donor alignment principles that are anchored in actions that we expect donors to take, specifically aligning their investments to national plans, the global goods components that I previously mentioned, to try to quantify the long-term costs of implementing digital systems, because oftentimes we have seen donors fund the creation of systems without really recognizing what the long-term operational costs would be. We aim to do a better job of tracking investments and understanding what activities are underway in specific countries, and recognize a need to strengthen the skill set within the donor community to be better contributors and evaluators of technical programs. There's another set of 5 principles that sort of guide the direction that we think donors will invest in over time. And at the core of that is the creation and evolution of country national digital health strategies. And also to make sure that we are investing in systems that are appropriate given the level of maturity that a given country's digital health system happens to be at, recognizing that there are evolutionary steps that each of those countries will need to take along their journey to healthy digital systems. We want to make sure that we are supporting in-country capacity for the creation of these systems, and believe that governance is at the heart of the successful systems, and oftentimes those human components, such as governance, are ignored and really need to be strong in order for the systems to succeed. We are also trying to drive towards broad information sharing and peer learning networks, such as AeHIN at the country and regional levels, because we really do see that as a way to strengthen and foster coordination. There are 32 organizations that have come together to endorse these principles. And at the moment, we're simply at a point in the process where there has been endorsement of the principles, but there has not been a clear articulation of what acting in accordance to these principles actually means. And so there is another gathering happening next week in the UK where a donor community with some country representation to share experiences from specific countries for strong examples of donor coordination. And we want to come together and identify specific actions that the donor community can take over the course of the next few years to really improve the way that we collectively show up and support digital health programs in developing countries. So I'm going to end the monologue there and would invite people to ask questions.
Thank you for that presentation, Sir Tim. We are now open for questions. So if you're seeing into questions box, please type your questions in there. Thank you.
While waiting for people to identify questions that they might have, I'll go back to this link with the digital investment principles. This website has both the principles as well as a little bit of a backstory and history around why the donor community felt it was necessary to come together and create these principles. And it also has links to all of the endorsing organizations.
Hello, if I may ask a
Yes.
question, this is Jai from India, AeHIN. And what's the governance structure for this for governing these principles itself? Like, we have this endorsing organizations. How is going to be the
Yeah.
governance, and what's going to happen to the investments that's already been made? Is there going to be any realignment of those, or review or realignment of those?
Those are excellent questions, both. There has been no discussion of realignment of any existing investments. So that has not been a topic of conversation. So within the Gates Foundation, which is the only organization that I can really speak to definitively, the donor principles are going to guide our future investments, but our existing investments are going to stay in place. And frankly, some of the investments that we have made over the course of the last couple of years map pretty well in principle to what the digital investment principles are trying to accomplish. So we hope that there won't be large shifts in the way that the Gates Foundation projects are put together and funded. The governance question is one that we are still trying to figure out and hope to get some clarity around next week. The principles for digital development wound up being housed with the DIAL program at the UN Foundation. That's an example of a governance type body that we might see the principles for digital development fall under. I think one of the things that has been a challenge for the Health Data Collaborative that has been in place for the last couple of years has been a ambiguous and not very crisply defined governance structure, and we definitely want to avoid some of the challenges that have been plaguing the Health Data Collaborative. I hope that answers your question, Jai.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you very much.
Any more questions from our attendees? Sir Tim, here is a question from Dr. Agbons Aya. He is from Nigeria, and he said that fragmentation is sometimes caused or increased by development partners who are either promoting a particular technology or using one that may not be sustainable. So how is this addressed?
That's an excellent question. Um, there are definitely many sources of fragmentation, and the digital principles that we are putting forward here for donor alignment are really focused on trying to help change the donor behavior that is contributing to the fragmentation. I think in some cases, donors wind up funding specific technology components that are not part of the country's national plan. So the objective would be to hold those donors accountable and make sure that the projects that donors are funding map directly to country national plans. The problem of sustainability is one that we have seen plague the digital health space for quite some time. And we are trying to both highlight that problem and at the same time identify the digital global goods that could be the core components that would, through their broad use and adoption, have stronger underlying business models and a broader customer base, and therefore be sustainable over time. So we hope to see a greater use by countries of those digital global goods so that they have systems that are built on sustainable technologies. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you, Sir Tim. We're still waiting for other questions to come. Any more questions from our participants? So far, there are no questions
Okay.
yet.
So I have been incredibly clear and crisp. Either that or the principles are just so self-explanatory and so inherently obvious that people recognize their need, which is great.
There are two questions.
Great. So much for everything being clear.
All right. The first question is from Dr. Agbuns again. He is asking, can you please explain further the invest in digital global goods phrase?
Sure. So digital global goods are software technology components that can be used in multiple settings, multiple countries, and multiple disease domains. A great example of a digital global good would be DHIS2. It's in use in 60 plus countries. It's an open source product. And there are many, many countries that have adopted it. That is the type of software tool that we would expect to see many countries implement. Similarly, another example might be a facility registry. resource map is a tool that an organization called Instead developed, and it is in use in a couple of different countries to help keep track of facilities and build a facility registry. So that's an example of another digital global good that can be a foundation component of countries' national digital health architectures. And so we hope that by identifying the digital global goods that are currently in use and are receiving some modest levels of support, that we can identify those that where there's high demand for the software components and then have the global community support those. There is currently an effort at PATH called Digital Square, which is doing quite a bit of work to both identify these global goods and to create funding opportunities for those. And there's quite a bit of information about that on the Digital Square website. I think you said there was a second question.
The other participant is asking if this presentation can be shared, sir.
Yes, it can.
All right, thank you. So any more questions from our participants?
Yes, this is Jay again. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead,
Yes.
Jay.
I was just looking for, is there anything specific that we are looking at the networks to contribute to this effort? Because I know that our chair, Dr. Buncha, is attending this meeting in Wilton Park next week. And then if like AeHIN, like networks, is there a way that, we can contribute to this? Or is there any expectations that in what way we are expected to contribute to this effort?
There are, I think I would say, hopes for ways that AeHIN could contribute, which is a little bit different than expectations. At this stage, we are hoping to learn from some of the networks like AeHIN around how countries have come together to identify common needs and share those needs across countries and share implementation strategies. And we hope that the networks will continue to be a strong resource for the broader community in identifying both key architecture components and digital global goods that can be supported. We really hope to learn at this point in time from networks like AeHIN about what are the good examples of donor coordination that you have seen to date. What are things that the donor community should try to emulate? And similarly, what are examples of strong national digital health plans that you have seen be created in your countries and the countries in your network? And are there components of those plans that we should be sharing with other regional networks? My personal hypothesis is that there is quite a bit of excellent thinking that has happened within AeHIN that that many countries in sub-Saharan Africa would benefit from, and I'm really looking forward to that knowledge transfer and hope that we can catalyze that.
Thank you, team. But there is just one more in addition to it's along the same lines of the question, the previous question. Is there a possibility that after this Wilton Park meeting, will there be the summary of the meeting can be shared or ask for public comments? Is it possible that if that is a possibility, probably we can circulate that in our network and then seek the feedback from the members, who are essentially the members or the seniors in the ministries of health?
Yes, definitely. I mean, this is not intended to be a closed process by any stretch of the imagination. And we really do hope to get feedback from the broader digital health community.
Okay. Thank you. Got it.
Thank you, Sir Jai and Sir Tim. We have another question from our participant. This one is from Dr. Pradeep. He's asking, is there a need for specific national policies to emerge to aid the adoption of these principles into a practice framework?
Well, I'm not entirely sure I understand the question, but the goal of the principles is to support national digital health strategies. So to that extent, we need there to be national digital health strategies in place to anchor the investments that donors want to make. So to the extent that countries have created national digital plans, we as a donor community are looking to those plans to provide guideposts for us for how we should help support each country's digital health plans.
Yes, I think you got it right, sir. Thank you. So, are there any more questions from our attendees? So far, there are no questions.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I will be sure to send a copy of this presentation along, and you're welcome to share it across the network.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your time with us.
Thank you, everyone, and please don't hesitate to let me know if you have any questions in the future.
Sure,
Thank
Tim.
you.
Thank you.